to forget that life's a game, but shit, I did it too, no, we all to blame. But it's never been the same since I learned the rules, since I got the tools and I dropped the fools. I saw the snakes and fakes and the hate that they make, the pain that they take, I just pray they awake. We may play the same game, but we do by different rules. Got a few I choose to follow, but my motto is the truth. Through the movement, commandments, solutions to the madness. My motive is decoding life's laws like mathematics. Found the blueprint schematic, showed me flow is automatic. Spit romantic semantics and then get back at it. Gotta have it. That's the first thing I found out. Why drop the clowns out? In the end, we all end up in a garbage dump, but I'll be the one that's holding your hand.
We are sick, fucked up and complicated. We are chaos, we can't be cured. We are sick, fucked up and complicated. We are chaos, we can't be cured.
Yeah, motherfuckers, no Bobs allowed. We in here. Welcome one, welcome all back to this glorious evening with us at No Bobs Allowed. Ladies and gentlemen, the whole crew is here just for your listening pleasure. Tyler, how you doing tonight?
I'm booming.
Tyler Boomin'. That's going to be our latest tag.
Booming.
Hashtag Tyler Boomin'. Yo, Leo, Chorny Boomin'. How you Chorny Boomin'?
I'm doing great. It's nice to see everybody back in the studio.
Bet, because we also got Joe. We got the whole crew here. How you feeling tonight, intern Joe?
I'm booming dandy.
Boomin' dandy. God damn, look at that. Catchphrases for all. We're going to be talking today about international music. Specifically, this particular band, Antwoord, and their idea of Zef. And we're putting it forward as our thesis being that Zef is a third world mentality, and we're going to be introducing you guys to that tonight. A little background on why we're doing this. Recently, I've gotten kind of bored with American music. A lot of it's getting super pop-based, and how hip-hop is kind of turning into hip-pop because it's being on the radio. It's becoming watered down for the masses, and it's losing that underground feel. So I had to literally go across the ocean to find some underground shit. I'm sure there is some in the United States, but it doesn't have that feeling of scrappiness that real up-and-coming artists have. So, getting all that aside, we have a particular thing we're going to chat about from Tyler's week, which is a Bob of the Week.
Okay, so Bob of the Week is going to be one of me and Joe's coworkers. She likes to butt into stuff that's not.
She just doesn't need
that.
to.
Yeah, she doesn't need to butt into it. There's a particular case I wanted to talk about today. I don't know if Joe has anything he would want to add after this, but so my mentor who kind of taught me my area, he used to kind of talk about his sex life to me all the time, and I'm like, dude, nice. I don't care. Like, this is work.
I've been in one of those situations where it's like, man, we would have had so much better of a relationship if you never would have said that.
Yeah, and this is what she has started to do to me, and I just walk away whenever she tries to bring up her sex life with her husband. This is like a 50-year-old, like, middle-aged woman. I'm like,
she's crippled.
And she's crippled, and I'm like, I do not want to know what your sex life is like.
I'd appreciate you not going into any details about what specifically she's telling you.
Right. I'm not gonna go into it, but just the fact that she feels that she needs to come to me with this stuff, like,
do you think she's hitting on you?
No.
Joe, do you think she's hitting on you?
Well, I mean, she is married, but I also.
Oh yeah.
Well,
okay, so for whatever reason, she's a little bit lonely.
Yeah.
And she's taking it out on you two.
That's a good way to put it.
Well, she kind of bullies Joe more than anything.
Well, Joe's a sexy man.
She uses her buddingness to kind of like.
Oh, it's a status thing too?
Her, yeah, it 100% into status thing.
Oh, that's,
at least with
wait
Joe.
a minute. This sounds like sexual harassment. You're telling me a superior is telling you sexual details that make you uncomfortable?
To Tyler,
To me, yeah. With Joe, it's more like, hey, are you working right now? Joe's like, yeah. And she's like, well,
Tyler,
you're not
this
doing it right.
is supposed to be a Bob of the Week, not the beginning of a court case. Jesus Christ, man. The prosecution rests. It sounds like you're getting sexually harassed. Like, that actually,
I think no
like,
contest.
that sounds what, like, this is.
No contest.
I guess. I don't know. But
wow. So, Bobs have a tendency to sexually harass. Real motherfuckers have no need.
Yeah.
That's some Bob shit. That's honestly quite disturbing.
Yeah.
I really hope that she stops. You should tell a superior that she's
I just walk away.
touching your brain inappropriately.
I just walk away.
Ugh. Well, let's move that way in the past. That's some shit that unfortunately it looks like Tyler's gonna be dealing with for a good bit of time here. Great.
She may actually be moved out of the department because the supervisor, her supervisor, also doesn't really like her that
Our
much.
main supervisor.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's an interesting note on people that whenever they have that thing where they don't really know how to interact with others, everybody tends to know it, and they just don't really. Nobody wants to be around that.
I think this is the politically correct term for all that I know, but I guess spouting knowledge that you don't actually either know about or spouting knowledge to someone that they already know about. She mansplains. I think that's how you put it.
I could see that, but mansplains. Well, let's just stop right there. She's mansplaining things that do not need to be explained to anyone.
In Tyler's case, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we're very sorry about that, Tyler. Yeah. Hopefully she stops eventually before you have to go to HR for this sexual harassment.
We don't
that's
really
what this
have
is.
an HR. It's kind of just Jeff. And I don't know if Jeff would do anything about it.
Well, that's pretty unfortunate, dude.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to a more fun topic.
I do have to butt in here and say they're just things that you don't talk about at work. It's awkward. It's awkward as fuck. I have this lady coworker that talks about her 60-year-old husband who's had a stroke, jerking it to porn, and how she has to block the TV because he spends too much money on porn.
That even makes me uncomfortable for you to have mentioned on the show. Why is she talking about that in a workplace setting?
I know, right?
Remember, a lot of people don't have a close group of friends that they can talk to about things like that.
Exactly.
And let's be honest, in the modern era, sex is becoming more open and more talked about. So I get why people from a previous generation may not. They're like, oh, these kids talk about sex. I can tell them that I like getting. Well, let's leave it right there. That I have a story of a family member of mine that shared some information that I can never look at her the same way. Oh. It's very unfortunate. Ooh. We could have been friends.
See, they're just things you don't talk about.
Yeah.
Keep it private. Keep it to yourself. Be proud of it.
Keep it no bobs allowed. Come on, because all it takes is one bob to ruin a good flow. Mm-hmm. So speaking of good flow, let's get right into Antwoord. Most people in the United States would probably know them by their Americanized version of the name, Die Antwoord. Even Eminem was guilty of trying to reference them in a track. I believe the line was, I'd rather hear Die N-word than Die Antwoord. Great bar, but unfortunately a mispronunciation of the name, and they jumped on him for it. Die Antwoord, coming from South Africa, their name derives from Afrikaans, which is a sub-language of Dutch. Or, I mean, it's a full language, of course, but it's historically related to Dutch, so it has the pronunciation similar to German as Die Antwoord, where it's like the W being a V, and I think even the ending D is a T, being Die Antwoord, translating to the answer. Same thing in German, it would be Die Antwoord, I believe. My German's kind of rusty. So this group was formed in 2008 by 3 members, Watkin Tudor Jones, who goes by Ninja, and Henri Dutoit, who goes by Yolandi Visser. And they met up with their producer, DJ High Tech, in 2008 in Cape Town. So before this, Ninja was originally from Johannesburg, South Africa, and he was actually active in the underground rave and rap scene since he was 13 years old, working on multiple different projects and with different groups before actually beginning Die Antwoord. And Yolandi, meanwhile, was born in Port Alfred, South Africa, a smaller town, I think a town, not even a city really, but she actually was orphaned as a child and never knew her biological parents. I think she may have known her mother in very early years, but she knows that her mother gave her away, giving her the sense that she was kind of unwanted. Later, she was adopted by a clergyman and was taken on by that family and taken care of, but eventually even sent to a boarding school by the clergyman at age 16. Here, she actually encountered a lot of artists, and she said it really helped in her artistic development, and she found herself flourishing when she had that group to be surrounded by. In 2008, she meets Ninja and releases their debut album, SOS. Predominantly, I don't know exactly, I think it was in the US as well, because I know they had a feature from Diplo performing, creating a beat for one of their tracks. So even from their debut album, they were working internationally. Soon they become pretty famous. I would say that when they talk about it, they say that there was a good period of time where they had released their videos and nobody watched them. And then suddenly, for whatever reason, they just blew up, specifically because their videos. They became very famous for shocking and controversial videos, such as One of their major ones is Fatty Boom Boom, which became infamous for using blackface. And we're talking like, I don't even know if I could call it blackface, because Yolandi is in full black paint. Like, her whole body is covered in black, except for yellow contacts that she's wearing and a yellow dress that she's wearing to make this creepy contrast. And the contacts are like cat eyes. So it's this unbelievably shocking video that, I mean, you thought it was bad in America when we did minstrel shows. It makes you stop in your tracks and look at it. There's no question about that. Then they have another video that, these are all off of their first 2 albums that got them international recognition. Another one is Evil Boy, which is talking about the practice, or at least the tradition, of forced circumcision in males in certain tribes in South Africa, specifically the Xhosa tribe. And there were a lot of complications from these. And we're talking like, I think in the year they released their video, 60 people died from botched circumcisions, and many more had, like, their dicks wouldn't work properly because of a botched circumcision. So it was really not a good thing. However, the belief in the tribe is that this is the rite of passage into manhood. So if you do not engage in this, you cannot associate with the male members of the tribe, because you are not a man. You are considered a grown boy, and therefore you are cast out of the tribe. So Antwoord really did not support this, and they fought against it, specifically through this idea of the evil boy for life. If you say that I'm not a man, I'm going to go and fine, I'll be an evil boy forever, and that will bring me further than risking my life by staying in this oppressive mentality. So nothing to say against these tribes. I'm sure there's a reason why they're doing this, but just by the fact that they're having a lot of complications from it, they came out as opposing this, which between that and using the blackface really got them notoriety, even to the point that South Africa was saying they were Satanists, like, and they kind of embraced it. Like, before you know it, their license plates are all Zef 666 or I meet my girl at room 666 of the motel. So they really embraced it, but this gets this image of South Africa of them being fucking Satanists, which really, I mean, them embracing it kind of got them in association with a lot of other people that got labeled as that, specifically Marilyn Manson, which is why we use that as our intro today. And they even later on, a couple of albums later, feature Marilyn Manson in one of their videos. Leo, did they even perform with him once?
I'm not sure.
I think we saw a video that they perform with him. I'm not sure. At the very least, he's in one of their videos showing support.
Yeah, good possibility. The video is the only one I remember where Marilyn Manson didn't have an appearance.
Yeah. Oh, I think that was Eminem, actually, that was performing with Marilyn Manson.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking.
That definitely happened. And Lose Yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is great that we mentioned it.
Yeah, and that's really relevant because that's another person that they got a weird association with, not necessarily intentionally, but by being part of this shock genre, they gained an association with Eminem's fans because similar people like them.
I would even make an argument that most of the world is religious. Most of the world. And when people are, they don't necessarily choose to follow a religion, they tend to get this like evil image. And it's like, all right, well, if I don't, follow a religion, or I have this imagery that goes against the establishment, against a lot of, what religious people perceive as like wrong or, immoral.
Religious extremists get like that,
Yeah.
where either you're with us or against us.
Exactly.
Either you're supporting what we believe, but that, in my opinion, it's what we were talking about in the Madison episode, that shows insecurity in one's own beliefs. If you have that feeling that you need to close your mind to an opposing viewpoint, that means that's a pretty fragile viewpoint to have, but that's what a lot of religious people are like. If you don't believe in what we believe, you are from Satan.
Yes, and based on that perspective, I think that's where some bands, when they catch that label, they're like, okay, well, I guess we're perceived as that now, so let's just roll with it.
Although let's make a caveat that Antwoord certainly is not victimized by being called a Satanist group. They really did a lot to warrant that. For example, here's a quote. Here's a quote from an article talking about specifically their video Evil Boy, talking about forced circumcision. This video makes Lady Gaga look like Celine Dion. If you don't like random erections, wooden erections, talking breasts with no nipples, words that aren't English, mud, grime, gold lame pants, clean and strong peni, machetes, more erections, jackets made of rats, monsters with erections, questionable facial hair, and prostitution, do not watch this video. really that says it all, because that is what the video is. It's literally a bunch of wooden and or fucking erect dicks just flopping around, showing off that, well, I mean covered of course, but showing off that no one should be ashamed of their anatomy, and you don't need to get sanctioned by God to be clean, that everybody is born clean in God's eyes, or Satan's eyes, whichever way you're looking at it. And you thought that was bad? Then they released the video Babies on Fire, which is it's talking about the sexual liberation of women and how a lot of the traditionalists in South Africa are very opposed to that. And it hinges on this double standard of Yolandi playing this young girl who is trying to have kind of bad boys over, like Zef guys, like kind of like greasy, grimy people from the streets. And the double standards of their parents, while Ninja's playing the older brother who's just having women over constantly, like having them coming and going from his room, and it being a point of pride, while for Yolandi, it's a point of shame for the family, and it's trying to break down those stereotypes. So, again, you can kind of see this liberalization of their ideas fighting against the traditions of South Africa and getting them very well known very quickly and very hated very quickly in South Africa. However, the rest of the world kind of picking them up as champions of this new kind of I don't give a fuck mentality, where it's like, if you tell me to do something, I'm going to do the opposite just to show you that I can. And I think that's really cool. So the way they describe this is with an interview. I believe this is in Complex magazine. The fucking God-given gift of artists is to create stuff from nothing. Antwoord makes hyper reality. We create exaggerated experience. This American reporter was telling us that reality TV makes Americans care about if things are real or not. But you watch reality TV and you get this dull feeling in your balls. You watch us and it's thrilling. There's a sweet analogy for how musicians can think about this. People are unconscious, and you have to use your art as a shock machine to wake them up. Some people are too far gone. They'll just keep asking, is it real? Is it real? And you'll find that that's the reaction to a lot of the artists we talk about today. People are so shocked, it breaks their reality. And either they can incorporate it and accept it, or they can reject it and be like, oh, that's satanic. And that's something that's happened with pretty much all of these artists.
And this is where I have to reference the Matrix movies, blue or red.
Yeah, these are a lot of people. Yeah, they're disillusioned with the standard reality, and they're making art that does not sync with the major narrative. And then they get a lot of flack for it. But that's where we lie, so that's why we're covering this. So let's talk a little bit more about what is the sound and what is the image of Antwoord. They associate themselves with what they call the Zef movement, which it's very hard to describe. It's derived from the name of the car, the Ford Zephyr, which became kind of like I would say a drift car. But before we get any more into it, we're gonna listen to a little bit of their sound. There are a couple of clips I rescued of their TV show Zef TV that now has been taken off the internet, unfortunately. But I got my hands on a couple of clips, so you can hear them one and only here. Check this out.
Bad fucking rave music.
High energy techno fucking.
I mean, who fucks with rave shit like that?
We need to combine that shit with the sound of the fucking streets.
So, now that we've kind of heard what they have to offer, we get their genre now as being rave rap, or I guess rave trap, depending on how you look at it. It's got that very high energy, but also extremely gangster sound to it. So, jumping to modern day, they have evolved very much. They've come into their own. That those controversies all happened only on their first 2 albums, and they've only gotten more controversial from there. So they have a total of 5 albums now, including House of Zef, which is released in 2020, being their final album, and actually meant the dissolution of the group, that now they've moved on to releasing mostly visual art. They were always kind of big in visual art. Like, their videos is what really got them famous, almost less than the music. So now that they've finished their musical careers, they're moving towards visual art, specifically by starting Zef TV, and they're actually beginning production on a movie. I know they already produced a movie, Chappie, a few years ago, and they had a short film, Umshiniwam. And so they've already been producing video, and now they're switching to doing exclusively that. Right now, they're actually going through some legal proceedings in South Africa over a new scandal with another rapper. We're not really going to talk about that because I don't really know that much about it, and there's no need to speak on something that you don't actually know the facts on. Even if I've done a bit of research, it's still, I don't really know what's going on with that. Point being, it's a beef with another rapper, and it's definitely putting them in court right now, so it's not going well. So for this reason, or some other reason, Zef TV got taken down. But luckily, we got these clips for you. Stay tuned for a couple more later in the show. So now let's change gears and look at Antwoord's mature message by asking the question, what is Zef? So, Joe and Ty, I'm going to look at you for a sec in that you both have no idea about this. What does that even mean to you? Like, you didn't know anything about South Africa before I talked about this episode. Like, what the fuck would Zef even be? It's like, I don't know, grunge, I guess, is the closest thing we equate it to. Like, people call it white trash, but really nobody knows exactly what is Zef. So let's talk about the theme of House of Zef. I don't know, it's really complicated. Like in what they did with House of Zef, they kind of, by making that their final album, they tried to transcend any single medium of art, and they crowned themselves the king and queens of the House of Zef, or the Tribe of Zef. And really, you can tell this is kind of a nuanced thing, and I'm not South African. I don't know a goddamn thing about exactly what Zef looks like on the streets of South Africa, but we have a couple of things that can illuminate exactly what this might be like. So here's a particular clip from Zef TV stating the mantra of the Tribe of Zef.
The Tribe of Zef is a warrior tribe. Soldier saints, 3 million strong. All united against a common enemy. Generation Retard.
So Generation Retard are a group of people that all want to be famous, but they're not good at anything. And they generally worship people that have become famous who aren't really good at anything either. And then we come in, the Tribe of Zef, and we are good at shit, and that sort of gets under people's skin, fucks with them, and so they hate us, because they ain't us.
You said anus.
I did.
So take a moment to meditate on that. There's a lot going on there. That's especially they're talking about Generation Retard. I'd say just listen back to that a little bit, because it's some very strange stuff, very Zef. But let's get back into what exactly Zef would be. Yeah, with the release of House of Zef, they dissolved Antwoord, and they ended their careers as individual musicians and took on their new roles as the gods of Zef. And that does sound a little bit goofy, but the following they have really, it does look at them as the gods of Zef. And even on their new album, they have the track "The Gods Must Be Crazy," talking about, like, you do not fuck with us because we have the power of a god, as being the pure embodiment of Zef. So this is something written on their main page by, I actually believe this is a family member of Yolandi, like maybe her adopted mother. I'm not sure, because it says it's written by Nagui Dutoit, and Henri Dutoit being her birth name. That's what I thought. But this is something you can tell written by somebody who knows them intimately. Their art and music burst my heart open and shone a light in my mind. Antwoord has shown people, especially young people, that there is a gate out of this crazy system we were all born into. Everyone is fascinated by the bad guys in films and music, and the crazy beautiful ones who do what they want and live their lives wild and free without caring what anyone else thinks. Ninja and Yolandi star as themselves in this high-energy Zef adventure story that they live. They have been and always will be so beautiful to watch in this role. Outsiders, misfits, freaks, and misunderstood geniuses all over the planet look up to Ninja and Yolandi as role models. Not Ninja and Yolandi, the most famous South African rappers in the history of the known universe, but Ninja and Yolandi, the free spirits, two normal human beings who use Zef alchemy to transform themselves into artists of the highest order. Antwoord has inspired millions of kids trapped inside their deathly boring normal human existence to do the same thing. Turn their life into art. Turn their stories into music and films. Turn a negative into a positive. This is what Antwoord did and continues to do, and this is what they will always be remembered for in our hearts. Love them or hate them, Antwoord will always simply be what they are, aliens of extraordinary ability, a miracle, a blessing, a light in the dark, living art. I just love that quote. That's like a mission statement. It really speaks to me. Like, and this highlights the first point I want to make about how the Antwoord has affected me personally as an individual, especially as an American man. I guess I am their target audience, but I didn't really know why. So I reflected on when I was younger, especially in middle and high school, I never really fit in. Like, I kind of hung with the misfits and outsiders, couldn't really connect with the popular kids who had money or status, or just weren't really dealing with problems at home. Like, I was the kid in high school who wear Slayer t-shirts and listen to metal, while everyone else was worrying about who would the prom king and queen be. And this is something where, Leo, I think you had a very similar experience coming from Ukraine, that something as simple as having a facial scar would affect how people would perceive you. We talked about this before, that in Ukraine, the scar that you have on the right side of your face, that would be fucking sexy. Like, that would be a point of pride, where in the United States, luckily for me, I have a very minor facial scar, but just the little thing. Well, I have another thing under my eye. Two things that people look at me when I was younger and they said, what's that? Like, why don't you look normal? Something as little as that, it gives you this mentality of an outsider, and I think you experienced this too.
I have. I got the scar when I was 6. I got bit by a dog, and its canine tooth went through my right cheek by the ear and left quite a significant mark. After that, as a 6-year-old kid, I guess that happened probably when I was 7. But my mom said something along the lines of, I had like this self-esteem issue. I was like, my face is ruined. I'm only 7 years old, and she's like, no, don't worry. It just makes you look tough. I'll make you look more like a man. And my grandpa kind of said the same thing. And after that, I felt relieved, and I was fine with that.
But that's a very third world mentality. In the United States, people don't think like that. Everybody is desiring this ideal of perfection that you have to be. I need my face symmetrical. I need to look like what I look like in the magazines.
I need to have my teeth bleached white.
Yeah, I don't want to look different. I don't want to be unique.
And so when I moved here in middle school, that's the reaction that I kind of got is, what's that? How'd you get it?
Yeah, and just something as simple as that, it gives this disconnect, right?
Yes. At that point, I have forgotten that I even had a scar. It's like, what do you mean?
And the same thing with me. I got super lucky that my scar is on my forehead. It's just a birthmark that I had to get surgically removed, but I always had long hair because of that. Because by the time I got old enough to realize that people looked at me and they were like, oh, what's that? I just kept my hair long and then nobody could see it. But for you specifically, that scar, dude, if you were in Ukraine, you would have babies by now. Like that's some tough shit.
I never even thought about covering it up.
Yeah, exactly. But that's in the United States. If you had grown up here, maybe you would have worn makeup or some shit to be afraid to be unique. So that's tying into exactly the way that I was feeling when I was a kid. And just especially having problems at home, that changes your whole outlook. You really do not worry about popularity because you're just trying to get by. So by the time I was 18 and my mom died, I realized that I was fundamentally never going to be normal like all the other kids who had made fun of me for being different. But I realized, well, I guess I hadn't realized until I encountered the Antwoord that in many ways, who wants to be normal? Who wants to be flavorless? You need to have some uniqueness to actually be a good artist. So I was in this place of being torn between always having wanted to be normal and being proud of the hardships I had overcome. So in 2014, when I first saw the Antwoord, I was immediately drawn to their image of Zef. Just weird freaks, misfits, people that don't fit in and are so proud of that. And I just want to take a second here. I think it's unlikely she would ever hear this, but I do want to give a huge thank you to the girl Lana that first introduced me to the Antwoord. Because if it weren't for her, I would have no idea what it means to be Zef. Because since she was from South Africa and her native language was Afrikaans, she actually was able to translate things for me and gave me an inside view to what the Antwoord was. So I got a very different perspective of it, that she translated certain songs for me, and I was like, whoa, these are some punk motherfuckers. For example, Leo, I bet you don't know what the reference in Cookie Thumper is. What do you think cookie refers to?
Oh, what most people listening to the show would think it
It's
refers
pussy.
to.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. But I didn't get that initially, and I didn't realize that Yolandi in the song Cookie Thumper, that's a super sexual song because
Extremely.
your cookie thumper is your cock. Like, I didn't get that that's what she means.
Oh.
It's your cookie thumper. So it's
Goddamn.
like, that's some slang that I never would have understood if it weren't for talking to this girl Lana, who gave me the inside look into how South Africa views them. Because, yeah, exactly. You never would have known. And I never would have known that the song Evil Boy was about circumcision. I mean, it's all dicks, but I wouldn't get that it was actually about...
It's hard to understand that from the video.
Yeah, and that South Africa specifically hates them for being that controversial. I thought the South Africa would respect them, but that's getting us to the core of what Zef is, this kind of grimy, unwanted element of South Africa. So, what is Zef? What is this? What is it that kind of changed me into showing me my pride in being unique and no longer having that feeling of wanting to be normal like I did when I was younger, to really realize that that's my greatest power? So here's another quote. This is from, I believe, Complex Interview. I remember reading this when I think it was in 2016, probably around then, and this clicked for what Zef was for me. When I meet them the following week in London at their record label, they're hunched inside their own brand tracksuits looking morose. Then, Ninja starts expounding on the meaning of Zef and he comes alive. It's like the underbelly of Afrikaans, an embarrassing thing that they want to hide away. The Zef swearing for me is so fucking extreme that it's like a cartoon language. This weird, like, freak mode fungus style. Because it's not just a language, it's a whole culture. Yeah, and we just, like, dived into that and made it our thing. Zef's kind of like you don't give a fuck and you have your own flavor and you're on your own mission, says Yolandi. It's associated with people who soup up their cars and rock gold and shit. Zef is you're poor, but you're fancy. You're poor, but you're sexy. You've got style. And that, I think anybody can connect to. People that, like, are American working class, people that grew up in the third world, anybody who has that mentality of, I didn't grow up with abundance, I had to work with what I got. That is what Zef is. It's like, we're talking going to the, not in a Macklemore way, but going to the thrift shop and, like, cutting up some clothes and sewing that shit together and making it cool. Like, you might not have shoes that match, but if they're too fly Adidas, why do they need to match? Switch the laces out. Do something to it. Make it cool. Make it cool. Don't buy something to be cool. Wear your clothes. Don't let them wear you. Actually have an identity. And I think that's relevant to American ideology right now, because we're in this new era of identity politics where everybody's worried about who am I? Who am I? Don't ask other people for that. Find out who you are and express that in everything you do. So, well, again, changing gears again because there's so many different sides to Antwoord. This is a good opportunity to look a bit more at Yolandi. So Leo and I already mentioned that Yolandi has a certain effect on us by being such a pure embodiment of feminine energy. It's unusual for a woman to be so tough and powerful without tapping into masculine energy at all. It's a good comparison. When we look at a modern American feminist icon like Cardi B, we see her as a strong woman who's tapping into more of the male gangster archetype to create her image, while Yolandi is nothing like that. While she's undoubtedly fucking gangster, her image conjures up the archetype of the helpless young girl that can get men to do anything through her feminine charm. A good example of this is the song Gucci Coochie, which, let me see if I can pull the lyrics off the top of my head. She gets everything she wants. She gets everything for free. She will fuck up your whole life with that little Gucci Coochie. And I believe the second verse is, her life is like her wildest dreams come true. She do whatever she want and she rap and sing some too. She bounce around the club like a psycho little cartoon. Something, something, something. And the neighbors are, she says jealous and like jalouse. I don't know. They sing a lot in Afrikaans and their accents are really thick. So it's sometimes very hard to understand them, which is why I really do give thanks to my friend from South Africa that gave me the inside look. Because I think I would have gotten turned off by their shocking nature if I didn't get where they were coming from. I find this a lot more powerful, Yolandi's energy. The power that Yolandi has over men, I can literally feel inside my DNA. She embodies the purest feminine energy, kind of controlling men from the inside out, rather than attempting to replicate masculine hard power, which is more brutal. It's manipulating men, using soft power in the most powerful way, through feminine guile. This is to say, I've also learned a lot about gender roles from Antwoord in seeing how Yolandi and Ninja interact with each other. And I find growing up in the US, there's a greater alienation of the genders from one another. than really has ever happened before. In the late 90s, we started to see a new declaration from women as part of the feminist movement, the women's liberation, that we don't need men. And mostly right, but there's that kind of lack of cooperativeness. And now in the late 2010s, with what we were talking about in the Columbine episode, all these incels and MGTOWs and men's rights activists, we're getting this new feeling that men are starting to respond to this by saying, okay, fine, we don't need women. And Antwoord even addresses this. In a world where we're starting to see sex robots, there is no more important thing to keep the genders together. And it shows this from them being from the third world. Times are still really tough, so it's indisputable that men and women need each other. And Antwoord displays this on the world stage, this incredible power that can only be achieved by the union of the eternal masculine and feminine, in a way that can't really, as masculine as a person can be or as feminine as somebody could be, it's incomplete unless it has a fusion of the two. And Antwoord really shows this in a way that's undeniable. Because in their marketing, Ninja is the ultimate masculine. Literally, the gangster who would do anything for his woman would kill for her. While Yolandi is selling sex, and a lot of the group's success is attributed to her and her gorgeous body.
Absolutely. And if you're going to be selling sex, you might as well be really good at it. And they are. Just the energy that they output in their shows, that sexual tension that's going on between Ninja and Yolandi, and Ninja's kind of like a caveman, and Yolandi's like his sex
Little
kitten.
doll. Yeah. Exactly.
It's so, it's so pure, and it's very attractive.
And this ties into the discussions we had on earlier episodes about the consequences of this political polarization of the sexes, and how for many ways it is done in a political way. The idea divide and conquer. Why would you not kind of pit people? It's the same thing they do with white and blacks. Like the idea that as long as you're worried about competing with the people in the same socioeconomic status as you, you're only worried about infighting. Then the government can pick all of your pockets at once. So looking at this from an interesting Eastern perspective, we can think about yin and yang, meaning yin being feminine energy and yang being masculine energy, as the energies of fire and water. And how when you have these energies out of balance, and when you sever the connection between the two, you see the pathologies of isolated energies that we're starting to see in the West right now. Kind of women's stagnation and depression of unmoving water, with men's uncontrolled rage and destruction of uncontained fire. It's kind of an Eastern way to look at it, but if you think about it like that, one of the many things we were talking about before on the Columbine episode is these school shootings, and how it's just a bunch of angry dudes with no outlet for their energy. We said it tongue-in-cheek before, but for many ways, if one of those guys had a girlfriend to be like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, it maybe could have chilled him out. And not to say anything's that simple, but that's certainly an element of it that we're forgetting in the West, that as men and women, we need to cooperate. We need to stop worrying so much about stepping on each other to try to get ahead. It's not about that. And especially from being in the third world, I've never seen men and women more cooperative. Like in Russia, I would always have this experience where I'd be talking to this group of people and I'd be like, damn, I think this girl likes me. And a guy would come over and be like, oh, you have met my wife. And I'm like, whoa, you're my age, like younger than me, and everybody's married, because there's reason to have somebody to support you. That it changes everything, especially in circumstances that are really tough. It becomes necessary.
And Ninja and Yolandi, they have been through some very tough times.
Yeah.
And they have developed a very strong bond in the process, and it definitely shows through their art. It shines, through their music, and then that perfect harmony that they have.
Yeah, like a really unifying energy, and something that I think we can all keep as a healthy role model, something that I don't think a lot of people have, especially in the United States, especially if you're from a minority that maybe your fathers are getting imprisoned a lot more readily, that it's always good to have a healthy role model, whether it's a man or a woman, to teach you how you can be and how you can be happy.
Exactly.
So, let's see. We got a few closing notes here. Just continuing, I think we really said it all. There's one additional thing, that their DJ High Tech is actually gay, which is so fucking cool because American hip hop has traditionally been super misogynistic and super homophobic. And just by Antwoord being themselves, they show us an example of healthy roles where it doesn't matter who you are, to be proud of yourself it's a priori. It's something that everybody should do. And that's something that I actually find that I gain a lot from gay men, that they are so proud of who they are. That's something that I think straight men can gain a lot from, just to be proud to be like, I love women. I think it's rare that people would actually identify like that.
And DJ High Tech is this super buff, like gay dude with
so masculine,
like deep voice, and
like he even has on a track. He's like, DJ High Tech will fuck you in the ass. Will fuck you in the ass, you punk ass white boy. Like, wow,
hard as fuck.
Like, what does he say? I'll fuck you in front of everybody, bitch.
Yeah.
I wish I could have that pride in my own sexuality, and every time I interact with their music, it becomes more and more. And on top of this is something that I think is kind of unknown, that Antwoord doesn't even talk about it. They consider themselves just friends, but they do have a 15-year-old daughter together. So
yeah,
although they're not a couple, they have a daughter. And beyond that, they've adopted 3 different orphan children that they now are creating their own family of people that are voluntarily together because they get along and they care about each other.
Is that the answer?
Yeah, goddamn, man. For all of us. That's in many ways, that's what I'm trying to do with No Bobs Allowed, the voluntary family, where everybody's here because we want to be and we just want to talk shit. There's no obligation. We're creating stuff because we want it to be genuine. We want to move people.
And there is unlimited ball breaking.
Oh, yeah. Fucking unlimited. As long as it's in a way to make you stronger. Because that's a big difference.
Exactly.
I see. A lot of people in the U.S. that have low self-esteem try to break each other's balls to tear each other down. Where for me, it's the same thing as martial arts. I'd way rather get punched by somebody who cares about me than somebody who doesn't. So that'll toughen me up so that when somebody actually comes at me, I'm ready for it. And that's really, I think that's a good conclusion for Antwoord and Zef. That's what the Zef mentality is. People that come from troubled circumstances and really need people to spar with to toughen each other up because we expect to be in tough circumstances in the future. That's a great quote from The Sopranos. What is it? It's from the one-legged Russian woman. In America, you expect everything to be good and you get sad when all of these bad things happen. While in the rest of the world, everybody only expects bad to happen and they are not disappointed. And for me, I intend to spend a lot of time in the third world and developing world, so I need to get toughened up because the city that I come from, certainly it gave me participation trophies and told me I was fine just the way I was, being weak. And that ultimately doesn't play out when you meet some dangerous motherfuckers.
And that's why you don't want to tear your friends down. You want to build your friends up.
And surround yourself with some serious motherfuckers. And so this brought Leo and I one night, as we do, to be discussing philosophy. And Leo brought up this idea of, in life, you are either a square or a freak. And we here at No Bobs Allowed certainly are not squares. Anything to say on that, Leo? Let's open this to the floor, kind of closing on Antwoord to hear what your thoughts are and talking about specifically this thesis of let your freak flag fly. Be whoever you are and be it to the fullest. And do never apologize for that.
Well, I think that kind of goes on the way of, you had mentioned it before about how there are a lot of sad people out there. And that's because they're trying to be someone they're not, and they haven't dug deep inside and truly expressed who they are. I think that in America we are very good at doing this.
Just pushing it down.
And
again, not to hate on religion, but that's what religion tells you. Everything can be solved through prayer and the Bible. Don't talk to a therapist. Don't ask the hard questions. Don't worry about not being normal. Just try to follow the instructions laid out for you and don't go against the grain. Don't break out of that mentality.
Be a Bob.
Be a Bob, because that's the thing. Bobs pay tribute. That's what a Bob does. They follow. Yeah, that's what they're best for.
Just keep pushing it down.
Yeah, exactly. Keep pushing it down, and eventually it's going to become intolerable. But don't worry about it. Just pray the evil away. If only that shit worked. Any thoughts, Joe?
I think it's sort of coincidental, but not necessarily that Leo's phrase was "be a square" or "be a freak." And I just learned recently. I don't know why it didn't occur to me. It's probably occurred to some of you. I learned of it in kind of a weird way, but the phrase "be here" or "be a square." I don't know if that's definitely not how the phrase goes, but that's the idea is if you're a square, you're not around like a circle. Don't be a square. Be a circle.
that.
Be around.
Whoa.
So like by not being a square, by being a freak, you've entered the fray. Put yourself out there. Be fearless.
Oh, shit. I love that idea of the circle. It's like be around, be present. Like that makes me think of a mosh pit. Get in the pit. Like
bit.
don't hang on the fringes. Get up in the mix.
And if you're really lucky, Kill Switch will just split the crowd in half and make everybody mosh.
Although, in that situation, I did catch some air when that giant biker hit me. Oh, my God. I actually went off the ground. That's when I realized that I should only mosh on people in my weight class.
There were big people.
Yeah, motherfucking bikers, dude. So, any final thoughts? Because I want to jump into the second wave of Zef, which is really what we're here today to discuss.
Oh man, are we going into? Are we traveling to Russia now?
Absolutely, man.
I don't have any further contributions. I think this is appropriate to jump into.
Hell yeah, because I really don't think it's obvious why Zef would take hold in Russia. It's just, especially coming from South Africa, they really have nothing in common, or so you would think. So we're going to look at this particular artist, Eldzhey.
Yes. Should we bring up the BRICS countries now?
I will in just a second, but actually, no, we could jump into it right now. Well, first, I got to talk a little bit more about Eldzhey because you got to kind of know where he's coming from to even know why it would be relevant of why that would occur.
Good point. That sounds good. Let's jump into it.
Eldzhey specifically, I connect with him in a way a lot more than Antwoord because he's in our age bracket. He's 26. And Antwoord, no, I mean, I don't want to air Yolandi's personal business, but she's in her mid-30s and Ninja is breaking 40. So they are of a different generation in that they are at the very least turn of the century millennials rather than us being right smack dab in the middle millennials. And Eldzhey is absolutely a millennial, just like us. Everything about him, like everything about him. So he's originally from Novosibirsk, which is the capital of Siberia, kind of like the unofficial capital of Siberia. It's the third largest city in Russia. However, it's 45 hours east of Moscow, meaning this is referred to as the Wild East. Literally, you cannot get police deployments there for 45 hours. So how can Moscow control the city when it is literally multiple days away by train? You can't control it. It becomes out of control. So looking at some demographics, we can see that the average salary is 33,000 rubles a month, which is about $430, meaning that the average salary in Novosibirsk is $5,000 per year. Compare that to Moscow, where it's about 73,000 rubles a month, meaning about $12K a year in Moscow.
Something to consider is the food is in Novosibirsk is probably about the same cost as in Madison. I mean, we're comparing big cities here, so obviously in New York, Novosibirsk compared to New York and Madison compared to New York, but at the same time, if you consider the yearly salary of $5,000 and the same cost of food as in Madison, it's crazy. So you can definitely get a sense that people have to do something, to survive.
An air of desperation, and even more when we look at the climate. In Novosibirsk, the average temperature from October to April is below freezing, meaning below 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius, which is brutal, especially when we factor in that in December to February, it is sub-zero in Fahrenheit. So we're talking like minus 15 to minus 20 Celsius. And even in the summer, in the peak of summer, in July and August, the peak temperature is only 68 degrees Fahrenheit all year. So this is literally some of the most bleak places on the planet, especially during the winter. So that is especially relevant, and it helps us understand why Russia is ranked number one. Ranked number one in male suicide globally. In 2016, 48 people per 100,000 were committing suicide. Now, if we look at the top 10 globally, Russia's followed very quickly by Lithuania being number 2, Kazakhstan being number 4, Belarus being number 5, and Ukraine being number 7. And when we include female suicide, these are still top 10. So it's important to understand that this is a major issue that's becoming relevant in the post-USSR, and there's really not a lot being done about it. A major factor of this being alcoholism, of course, and drug abuse, specifically drug overdose. In the former USSR, every year 400,000 people die from overdose, with the average age being between 15 and 24 years old. That's not to mention selling drugs or being involved in their trafficking or being involved with the people that are trafficking them. So this is all to say that the background Eldzhey comes from is some of the most desperate on the globe. So now we should take a step back and talk about BRICS countries and the idea of why would it be that it's Russia that takes up the second wave of Zef? Why do they connect to it? And it didn't really make sense to me until I took a course with Leo at MATC on sub-Saharan Africa. MATC being the Technical College for Medicine. And it introduced me to this idea of a BRICS country, which, are you guys familiar with this, Joe and Ty?
I'm not.
I don't know what a BRICS country is.
So BRICS countries refer to Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which are the 5 major emerging national economies, kind of besides major westernized countries like Europe and the US. It's these 5 that are the emerging nations that also have significant influence on the regional affairs. So these are basically the up-and-coming nations that will control major regions of the globe in the next, let's say, 20 to 50 years, like Russia and China being the major ones on the Asian continent. Then South Africa, that was kind of a more recent addition, but South Africa being the most quickly developing country in Africa, Brazil being the major one coming up in South America, I think followed by Colombia and a couple of other ones, but really Brazil is the major up-and-comer, and then India being in the same bracket. So we can look at that, even if we look at the COVID pandemic and how that's affected people, we can see that these are nations that were at a critical point of growth that the COVID pandemic really messed up. Like specifically India, like just little things like not having fully paved roads to traffic goods. Little things like that are going to affect your ability to do something like distribute a vaccine to small counties, anything like that. Then if we look specifically at Russia, we can get that it's arguably the most westernized of the remaining 4 over Brazil, India, and China. So it was in a unique position to break into European markets through the usage of Russian language in ex-Soviet states. And, I mean, it's important to realize that a huge portion of the world speaks Russian. That's a major reason why I'm investing in it.
And if you consider entertainment, since this is the focus of our topic today, it takes resources to produce entertainment, and obviously the countries that are further in their development will be the ones that are going to have the technology to release, better, more improved or content that's compatible with the world market.
Yeah, it's like well produced. It's easy to connect to. It's not as rough around the edges.
Yes.
And Russia's in a very unique position because they, at least Moscow and St. Petersburg, has the resources to produce content while they have a huge market by being positioned next to Europe and by having so many millions of people that still speak Russian from the Soviet Union. For example, whenever I'm looking up translations for Eldzhey's songs, I end up on this page for singing karaoke in Czech. So it's all transliterated to Czech, which I can't really read, but it's interesting because it reminded me of when I was living in Prague that there's a huge proportion of Russians, and although the Czechs don't really like them, something like their music would become instantly popular. Because even if you don't speak Russian, if you speak Czech, you can understand enough of it, especially if it's party music. That's all you need. And before you know it, you're speaking a little bit of Russian, so it's good for the Russians too. They love that political kind of getting up into your brain.
Russia has this history of making everybody speak Russian as well as their native language, but then at the same time considering anyone that speaks Russian to be Russian. That's how you take over the world.
Yeah, take over their minds first and then the country. Why invade when the U.S., they're kind of taking our model of our American pop culture is in everybody now. Therefore, a lot of people want to assimilate.
A lot of people speak English all over the world, thanks to the Brits.
Yeah, exactly. And we are the legacy of that cultural warfare. So for this reason, consciously or not, I took the opportunity to travel to Russia for the first time during the 2018 World Cup. Hrvatska, represent. I supported the Croatian team because I have Yugoslav on my father's side, and they came in second, so I was repping them. Of course, I was in Russia, so I was repping Russia. But when Russia eventually lost, let's be honest, no offense to their team, but I can't believe they made it as far as they did.
And you speak Russian, so technically you are Russian.
Exactly.
Traitor.
Well, but that's the thing. I was going for the Russian team until they played Croatia, and let me tell you, when they lost to Croatia, it was an awkward day with my friends.
Oh, there were so many bar fights, I bet.
It was nasty because I was in Petersburg, so at least people are a little bit more liberal, but there's a lot of chanting that goes on going down the main strip whenever Russia won. And they didn't really take kindly to the fact that, well, I mean, at least Croatia's a Slavic team, so if they win, it's for Slavs all over the world. The Russians were like, no, Russia or no. Either it's Russia or we won't even watch the game. But they're not big footballers anyways. So after the World Cup, I decided to stick around in Petersburg for a month to improve my Russian, and I started frequenting the clubs where Eldzhey's music started getting played. Mostly in the grungier clubs, specifically this neighborhood in St. Petersburg called Dumskaya, which is like greasy. Like one of my buddies told me he didn't go there because it was regular that at least some person would get stabbed each night. But I mean, it was also great clubs. But specifically, this is something I wanted to talk to you about, Leo, because Eldzhey has a very grimy vibe because of his use of mat, or Russian cursing, which cursing in Russian has a different connotation than in English. Could you expand a little bit on that? Because in English, similar to what Ninja was talking about in Afrikaans, that their cursing is so intense. It's not just like in English, like fuck is the worst thing we can really say. And that's bad, but that's not fighting words. But in Russian, pretty much any curse, if you say it to the wrong person, is going to be a big deal.
It can also, in that sense, it can also be as a rite of passage. In a sense, drawing from my experience of living in Madison, Wisconsin, I've recently been enjoying just kind of like cussing out in public. Like I was at Hy-Vee earlier today, and I saw this Peruvian guy that I used to work with for like years when I worked at the nursing home, and I was surrounded by people. There were probably 4 or 5 people right next to me, and he walks by Cruz, and as he's like 4 feet away, and Cruz is just this really intense guy. He's always just focused. He was a major perv at the nursing home. I mean, he would like try to touch every girl. He tried to touch my mom once.
Wow, sounds like Tyler's coworker.
She put him right in this place. Just this pervy, like 60-year-old Peruvian dude. And I'm in Hy-Vee. He just walks by me, and as he's like 5 feet away, I look at him and like, fucking Cruz, and I yell this at Hy-Vee. And then the next thing that I proceed to say is like, that Peruvian motherfucker, or that Peruvian fuck. That's what I say. And these people just kind of look at me. Nobody says a word. They just keep going.
Maybe they are a little judgmental, but we're talking.
Oh, yeah, they looked at me, sure.
But they're not going to get violent.
Yeah. Oh, they're fuck around Madison. No one's gonna say shit. A bunch of pussies living around here, man. You can fucking rule these people.
Whereas in Russia, if you hear people that are cursing, and I mean really cursing, like we're talking every 4th word is a curse.
You will get kicked out of a store.
Oh yeah.
No, you'll get kicked out of a store. You'll have like the public. Like, you'll have 10 people around be like, watch your language, watch what you're saying.
But even why is that? My understanding, as I get more into Russian, I realize that it has a mild prison connotation. Am I right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's the rite of passage. When cursing is for thugs. Tattoos are either for thugs or people who have served in the service. So it is a sort of rite of passage. And it does create its own, street language, similar in like you get the street language in the big cities in America, and it's kind of its own language. And same with like that Afrikaans kind of cursing.
Yeah, it indicates you're part of the bottom class. Like it's funny, in Always Sunny, they would always say fringe class, like people that are living on the edges of society, the people that are part of society but don't necessarily follow its rules.
Yes, and that's what makes it so Zef, is when you are on that fringe and you are speaking that dialect, and the mot, and it's different, in different city blocks, but that basically grants you acceptance.
Yeah, and I remember you saying before that it would be like the drunks who would teach you the curses. And I remember a friend of mine in Moscow told me when he taught me my first curses, he said, these are things that I was taught by my grandfather. These are powerful words that you need to understand so you do not use them haphazardly, or there will be consequences.
Unless you're drunk. Now, if you are drunk, nobody gives a fuck if you curse in public. Because they're like, you don't have your mind's qualities about you, so.
Oh, you gotta love the double standards of Russians. They're like, never use cursing unless you're drunk and unless you're always drunk.
So basically, if you don't want to wear a mask these days, you just have to be drinking all the time.
True that. So, getting back to Eldzhey, this gives him a very dark vibe versus the rest of the people that we'll talk about. He has tattoos, especially face tattoos, and he's kind of associating himself with that lowest class of possibly in and out of prison characters.
Bandit.
Yeah, exactly. The bandits, dude. The people that potentially wish you actual harm and will take what you have just to get ahead because they have nothing to lose.
And that was part of kind of his,
his image, yeah.
His image, his upbringing also.
Absolutely. Well, he even references, when he talks about his fans, he says the Atmarozki. Like how would you translate, like the frozen out ones?
Yeah, icicles.
Yeah,
Atmarozki.
yeah, like the isolated, and him being from Novosibirsk, like a place where it is hard winters, he identifies this as this Atmarozek, like an totally immoral person. Yeah, cold and kind of thrown away by society and left to freeze out there. Literally left to freeze out in Siberia, but he survived, and it's only the strongest that do survive. So that's what he's putting his image towards. And he comes out, I think it was his second or third album that he starts explicitly associating himself with Zef. He releases 2 high-energy rave tracks titled Zef and Zef 2.0. And again, these are noticeably darker than Antwoord. They have a much different connotation. For example, the hook for Zef 2.0 is, I'll teach you how to dance Zef. I'm shooting at the feet of all of those who aren't dancing. He also has multiple songs about his own amorality and the type of depravity he had to indulge in to survive his city, such as selling hard drugs, robbery, contemplating murder for hire even as an available means of upward mobility because there really wasn't anything else for him. Plus the pain of having to leave his friends and family behind to have any hope of escaping the cycle of poverty and addiction in his city. It's a totally different sentiment, where in South Africa you do see a lot of like meth use and a lot of cheap drugs of abuse. But for Eldzhey, him having to openly say like, yeah, that was me. I was the one selling the hard drugs that killed the community, and that's how I'm here now. What do you have to say to me? That's a very different stance on it. And this really, it just highlights how brutal life in Russia is, that he would become one of the fastest rising stars in Russian pop culture, while he's not only being on the lowest rung of society, but he's proudly declaring that he is an Atmarozek. Like, he is, like, amoral, like a fucking amoral thug that really doesn't care about anything.
Moral relativist.
Yeah, and that very much comes across in his music. Yeah, again, connects a lot to Ninja and his image. But it's a little bit different because in the interest of being a pop idol, Eldzhey also incorporates basic elements of popular appeal, most notably his relationship and now marriage to the popular Russian blogger Nastya Ivleva. Again, doing it all, really. Becoming a pop star, becoming a rap star, becoming a rock star, all of these things he's trying to pull into one. And he takes on a similar image to Ninja as the romantic gangster. The guy who the girls swoon for, but will also slit your throat if you say the wrong thing. And that's every fucking Russian man I've encountered is the same way. Because they huge romantic influence in terms of like the French romanticism. They love that shit. Plus, hard motherfuckers. So they're the same that'll like kill you and take your girl. Very, very much like guys in South Africa because of just those brutal circumstances. From watching Eldzhey's videos, you also get the impression that the Russian Far East is greatly influenced by Japan and Korea, and this produces Eldzhey's pseudonym of Sayonara Boy, and also introducing a new alter ego, Samurai. So again, we're seeing the same thing that Ninja has as this influence of Japan, because they both kind of look up to it. I mean, hey, I'm studying a Japanese martial art. I totally get it. What kid didn't grow up watching anime in our generation? Everybody kind of idolizes that ninja mentality.
You think that's a sort of there's some kind of connection to their music, them in their art? They are the ninja, the samurai.
Well, yeah, because the story of the ninja is those that were driven into the mountains and eradicated and literally created their whole culture in the guerrilla tactics of having to survive, where they are not wanted. They are specifically hunted down. So I can see very much how that applies to them. And specifically Eldzhey, you can tell that there's a different feeling in Novosibirsk rather than the rest of Russia, that even just looking at the people, they are noticeably of Central Asian or East Asian descent. They are not white. Like, it's a common misconception that most Russians are white. You're a great example. Like, here you're white. In Russia, you're not white. Like,
No.
that only European Russians are considered white. Everybody else is either Asian or Tartar.
They call me Hachol, Psychokli.
Yeah, Hachol, which, how would you say?
It's a mix of different nationalities, just because Russia just kind of took everybody over and made them speak Russian and just basically told them they're Russian.
They Russianized everybody.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, it works out really well for somebody like me that wants to enter into the culture, because all I have to do is speak Russian, and I can have access to people as far-reaching as Kazakhstan or Belgrade. Everybody's speaking Russian. It's a totally different world that not a lot of people have access to. So all of this was becoming clear to me as I was starting to use Eldzhey's music as a way to learn the street Russian that I wasn't getting in class. And after a while, I saw it advertised while I was in Petersburg that he was headlining a festival, so I went to check it out. It was called VK Fest, and it was held outside the city. And it was at this festival that I got exposed to a ton of other Russian artists, many of which we'll talk about in part 2, but first of which being Little Big. Though, actually, now that I look at the time, I'm thinking we're going to save Tommy Cash and Little Big for part 2. So, listeners, stay tuned for next week where we pick up part 2. And in the meantime, follow us at No Bobs Allowed on Facebook and No Bobs Allowed Official on YouTube. But here, for the end of this show, enjoy another No Bobs Allowed exclusive clip from Zef TV. Однажды мы будем на вершине.
So, Yolandi, one thing I have a problem with, in your music, there is not enough Xhosa in it, you know?
Yeah.
Just to add some little bit of texture. I've prepared a nice piece for you that I would like you to incorporate.
Okay.
It goes, Balekisa, Balekisa driver, Ungoyiki driver.
That's fucking cool. I like that. What does it mean?
It basically means drive faster. It's basically a message to the driver. Ungoyiki driver must just trap and just go and just be fearless and just trap. Balekisa means drive faster, you know. And then ungoyiki means just forget about your fear. Just don't be scared. And you have to sing it right, you know. You have to get the pronunciation on point, like, you know, the diction and everything, you know.
Okay.
So
let's go. Let's try. So it's like Balekisa driver.
Yeah.
Ongoiki driver.
Nice.
Balekisa